Okay, welcome to the Pinpoint Asia Podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Christian Ward, this handsome-looking gentleman right over here. He is the CEO of Daxtra, right? A service that we use, and I like it. I like it a lot. We've been using it for many years, and I thought, wow, we should have him on the podcast because he runs a big SaaS company. What is SaaS? I think we all know it's software as a service, but what we want to do in this podcast is to delve into Christian's background, how he became the CEO of Daxtra, and then he left, started his own company, then he came back in, and then now Daxtra operates in many different countries and they've got a lot of subscribers. We're going to go into all that, right? So first of all, welcome to the podcast, Christian, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's great to be participating. Thank you for the invitation. This is great.
Because first I'm going to ask you to do this, right? Mm-hmm. Daxtra, what does Daxtra do, and what kind of solution do you provide?
Okay, so what does Daxtra do? There's so many ways to skin a cat, as my old man used to say. So, I mean, Daxtra on the surface of it is a software company, a SaaS provider. So we provide a service, technology solutions that provides business outcomes. But really what I like to look at Daxtra is we are a data optimization service provider. So what that means is, within your case and our customers, which are in recruitment, making our customers have better sense and control over their data to make informed business decisions. So, which candidates could be suitable for opportunity? How can we help identify great talent to jobs, matching that really quickly so candidates and recruiters can be having informed conversations that you can then present them to your customers. So yes, we're a software company, but it's really helping and creating opportunity and data monetization for our customers so you can really be working at your optimal level. And
it's primarily targeted at recruitment companies, correct?
So I think in the early days of Daxtra, or what I call, I'm sure we'll get into this, in my first instance at Daxtra, it was very much recruitment agency driven, or staffing, as we like to say in our North American operations. But more recently, we've started to look at the corporate direct hiring, so working directly with the corporate HRs and the talent acquisition team, so internal HR. But again, the fundamentals is all the same. It's how can we help great talent get in front of great opportunity very quickly at scale. So, having great people in a business is what helps a business thrive. We can't create success unless we have the right tools, the right resources in our organizations so we can hit our business goals or objectives. So we want to be that sort of catalyst for our customers to make sure that they can operate to the levels that they need to.
Give us an idea about how big Daxtra is at the moment.
So we are, subjective I would say, but we're a small company in the sense we're about 120 to 130 people. Globally head office in the United Kingdom, actually in Scotland, was where we first birthed the company, you could say. We have operations in North America and obviously here in the Asia Pacific region as well, with Hong Kong being the regional hub, which is where I sit and my control is the APAC business.
And how many customers do you have in the APAC region and globally, roughly?
In the thousands, probably about 3,000 to 4,000 off the top of my head, something like that. And they range. Look, we range from small, startup businesses to the big multinational staffing organizations to some of the biggest technology companies in the world. So it's quite a range, because the beauty of what Daxtra has is, whether you're trying to hire one person or you're trying to facilitate thousands of hires across the year, the fundamentals of being able to match great talent to the job description and in a meaningful time is still the same. So we're able to, and this is the luxury of having SaaS, is being able to have a solution that can scale to all sizes of opportunities, or all sizes of customers, I should say.
Okay, now we're going to take a step back, right? We know what Daxtra does, but let's go back to your career, right? So you started off as a Mandarin teacher in Taiwan, yeah? So why Mandarin, why Taiwan? Give us a little picture as to how that unfolded.
First of all, let me correct you, not Mandarin teacher. I was a teacher teaching English in Taiwan. I do speak a little bit of Mandarin, but please don't test me, or I'm definitely not going to try and say anything, so it's for fear of embarrassment. But I was actually studying in Taiwan. I was studying Mandarin Chinese, and at that time I was pretty broke and I needed a job, and luckily for me a school offered me opportunity to try my hand at educating young young students English language. So I did that, and I was actually brilliant. Actually, something I've always said that I wouldn't mind going back into is teaching, because it was very cool, really great opportunity, really great experience. I really love teaching.
And then how did technology come about after that?
So the real answer was, at that time I was very much just a newly graduated individual, just did my bachelor, went to Taiwan to learn Mandarin Chinese. My student debt was pretty much going up as opposed to going down, and I needed a job. And so I came back to the UK, where I'm from, and I started to research into job opportunities. And my father, very accomplished business person, was in sales and kind of walked that path. And I never thought I would go into that sales career. But I sort of fell into this, and I kind of I met a graduate recruitment company. I didn't really know the funny thing is I didn't really know what recruitment was at the time and how recruitment could help me as a candidate. And they introduced me to, well, have you thought about sales and things like this? I thought, sure, why not? I just need to make some money. And I got introduced to various different companies, and actually one of these companies was Daxtra. And I remember when I first met Daxtra many years ago, I think 2003 or something, if my memory serves me correctly, 2004 maybe. They talked about AI even then, and CV parsing, search and matching technology, and all this cool stuff. I had no clue what this meant, but it sounded really cool. I thought, if it's cool, I can maybe sell it. And that's the honest answer of how I fell into a career of sales and SaaS technology.
So you don't have a tech background?
I do not. My degree was in politics and Asian languages, so it couldn't go further from my from what I focused on at university.
So Daxtra was founded around that time, right? 2001,
I think
was it?
maybe 99 or 2000. So the original co-founders were PhD graduates from the University of Edinburgh, which, if you know about University of Edinburgh, has a very prestigious faculty around computational linguistics and natural language. And this is sort of some of the fundamentals of how the original technology platforms were built from, was from these guys who specialized in that discipline.
And at that time, right, was there a lot of competition for what Daxtra was providing?
Do you know what? I don't think there was. I think competition at the time was not like for like from a solutions perspective. So from CV automation and CV parsing and search and matching it was pretty cutting edge at the time. Obviously now it's just expected, sort of thing. But I think then it would be maybe human beings would be sort of like copying and pasting words from a CV and then trying to add them into a database manually, or it would be outsourcing businesses. There wasn't exactly a competition from a technology provider at the time. That came probably about 5 or 6 years later. So in essence, it was quite an innovative time for Daxtra. They hit it very, very successfully at the right time, where recruitment was really, particularly in the United Kingdom, was exploding. I think at the time 85% of hires were done through agencies when they launched it.
And the founders, I think Sergey is one of the founders, right? So
the original founders actually is Steve Finch and Andrei Mikheyev. Andrei is actually still very much part of Daxtra to this day, even since we've gone through sort of being acquired by private equity. Andrei is one of the original founders, and he's very much leads the research and development of where our products are going in the next sort of, let's call it Daxtra 2.0, of where we're going in the future with our technology.
Right, so how did they decide to launch a product like this?
So, I just test my memory now, but I think so. When they developed the technology, and it wasn't really designed for recruitment or talent acquisition at the time. It was more, they had this technology that could understand contextually text, so you could apply it to any sort of documentation, electronic documentation, and it would understand the context of, well, what is a noun, what is a verb, and, what is important in this document, what's not. And I think at the time they were thinking about, well, how could we apply this to maybe legal documentation? So, obviously in law cases, you're trying to find all the right information to get some summaries. Obviously, digitization and extraction technology can be very useful. And they were I think that was one of the areas they were exploring into, and it was more of a raw technology. They were just kind of, where could this sit, which industry or which use case would be the most appropriate. And the serviced office, not serviced office, but I think a shared office that they were utilising was with a recruitment company. And I think just over a coffee, talking to the recruitment company that was pretty much, where you're sitting there, and I'm sitting here, I was like, hey, could you apply this to CVs? Because one of the biggest pains is, as a recruitment business, the intellectual property is the relationships with the candidate, but having that information in an applicant tracking system and having it available for everybody in the business to be able to benefit from. If it's stuck in a recruiter's inbox, or it's back in the day in a file in a drawer somewhere, it's not being utilised to its maximum capabilities. So being able to apply the technology to a CV, understanding the CV and all the the contact informations, the work histories, the education, and applying that to the ATS. They're like, could you apply that? And they're like, yeah, that should be no problem. And it was really, that was the day that the light bulb went on. It's like, we should apply this to recruitment.
Well, so when did you come in then? So around this time, you met someone there, and then they hired you as a sales guy.
So you mentioned Sergey, who was the first hire. He was the original sales director, and then he became one of the sort of like the third founder, you could say. He actually hired me, so I'm very grateful to Sergey. So if you watch this, thank you, Sergey. Appreciate it. He hired me, and I was based in London. They were looking, so I think they'd proven the model. They've had a few, handful of recruitment clients who were kind of, let's call them early adopters, to validate that this could be something that could be productized. And at that point was, yes, that was validated with outstanding results. So then they want to invest into, well, let's look at a sales team, and I was the first salesperson that joined Daxtra.
So at that time, was SaaS even a concept?
Yes.
SaaS
has been around for quite a long time. I think it's like a lot of things. It's like AI. AI in maybe the last 24 months has got, maybe 24 is maybe a bit unfair, maybe a bit longer, has become this common word that we're all using, we're all getting excited about. AI has been around since the day Daxtra started, even before then. I think it's been a concept like SaaS as a software as a service has been around for a very long time. I think certain terms become everyday words and things like this. So it's nothing new in that sense. It's just the way that that we've been doing business, or technology companies been doing this for a very long time.
So you spent 9 years in your first stint with Daxtra,
roughly,
right? Yeah. So tell us about. So you went from the sales guy to the CEO, right? In 9 years, yeah. The first time around.
Yeah. So CEO is more of a, I would say, it's a different time where Daxtra. Let's call it my first innings, to use cricket analogy, my first innings at Daxtra, I was the salesperson, and I was very fortunate that the industry was just booming. We had fantastic technology. Competition was tough to keep up with us, and we all worked really hard. So I was very successful, and that was because of multiple different factors that all came together, and I was very lucky. So at that point, we'd done a very good job in the UK market, and I started to look at what could we do in Asia, and I wanted to come back to this part of the world. I'd studied out here, and I wanted to see if Daxtra could make it in APAC. But at the time, from a tech stack and recruitment businesses, it was a little bit premature. It wasn't quite as the concepts of ATSs and CV parsing, such and matching was still kind of a bit new, and so we didn't really start to get much traction. But on the flip side of a few deals in the UK with clients that had operations in North America, the US market started to take off. And so I moved to North America, and because I was the first guy I opened up the operation there, I was the first guy there, I became the head of the US operation. We built that business, and then after that, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I said, right, based on hitting certain growth metrics or targets, let's go and try and do the same in APAC, and we brought the business as well to here in Hong Kong. And what's funny, since I've rejoined, I opened up the North America operation in Richmond, Virginia, and it's still there. Obviously, it's a new premises now, much bigger. And the regional head office for Daxtra in APAC is here in Hong Kong, and it's still here in Hong Kong, so it's kind of serendipity that I'm back. So you're very familiar surrounded, but with a very different initiative.
In those first 9 years, right? Tell us about the company culture and were all these targets to expand, right? Were they very aggressive? Like, I mean, how did the founders, right, capitalize on the opportunity then, and how did they manage to grow the company?
It was, I think, look, and I've been in multiple different companies, so this isn't just necessarily a Daxtra, but I've seen themes that, you can put some strategy in place, but sometimes you just have to go out and do it and try and fail fast. I learned very quickly, failing fast is a good thing. And so I had a very great relationship with the founders, and they were very trusting in me, but also within the strategy we put together, but also were prepared that strategy may not be the right one once we start to execute on it. So I think what was the initiative was, let's see how far this can go, and let's not necessarily put specific targets in place which could stifle growth or stifle creativity, because the technology was still evolving, and we were thinking, could it go over here, could we apply it over there, what else could we build off this? So we wanted to make sure that we maintained a level of creativity that wouldn't just suddenly stifle opportunity, because as soon as you start to say, let's do this, I'm going to sell that, and it has to go over here, it sometimes blocks out all other opportunities. So we wanted to be agile in the way that we expanded the business. Hopefully this answers your question. So it was we knew that we wanted to go outside of the UK. We weren't sure how it's going to be perceived in North America. We weren't sure how it's going to be taken on board or adopted in this region as well. So we had to have that kind of very flexible, what I call like an agile mentality, and learn to fail fast. So then we can switch it up.
But was the plan to always expand in America, or did it come about just because you were?
I think there was conversations, and you have to understand that at the time the UK market was absolutely booming. In North America at the time, obviously it's a much bigger market, but when you break down we were only selling to the recruitment staffing industry at the time. In North America, I think 40-50% of hires were done through staffing and recruitment, whereas in the UK it was in the high 80s, close to 90% were doing that. Plus it was close to home, we knew the industry, and by the time we went to America, we still had so much more opportunity in the UK market. So it was more of is this going to be adopted? Is recruitment going to grow further into North America, or is it going to regress? And I think when I moved to the States, it was in 2007, and 2008 was not the best year, as we know. So there was still a lot of questions marks around it. Is this something is the industry going to bounce back? What's going to happen? So we went in it with, we want to grow, we want to be international, but we need to be humble, and we need to learn, and we need to make sure that if things aren't working, that we can quickly change and try a different path.
So earlier you alluded to having targets that don't stifle creativity, right? What's an example of that?
Well, I think what it is when anything, and I apply this to, what I learned over the years with Daxtra and when I was at LinkedIn, and obviously with my sneaker company, is as soon as you go out and say, right, this is the product, and you start selling it, sometimes all you can think about is selling that product. But maybe that product has got other iterations of development and expansion or differentiators that could happen, and you want the market to give feedback to you about what they like, they don't like, where it could evolve to. You need to learn maybe what you think it can do, but actually the market thinks it can do this. You want to make sure that you take on board, or you consistently take that on board as you grow. If you suddenly set targets, we have to do this, and we've done the product's there, we just need to support it now, go to market and sell it. I think that's a very aggressive way to go to market with something new, particularly with a new product or into a new market that you're not familiar with. And sometimes I think you may have the best intention or the best ideas, and as soon as you develop it, I think something looks red, and someone over here goes, well, I think it looks pink. You have to take that all on board to position, well, how does this fit in? And do we have a different value proposition that we didn't even realize? So that's what I mean about is making sure that you don't stifle that creativity, because a lot of the time, you're a customer, is we learn from you what is good and what's not working and what is working, and that's how we can evolve the product and the solution, and that's what keeps us in business. So I always say to my team, and when I'm growing businesses, I don't want to be the best. I never want to be the best. I just want to be better tomorrow. because that means I'm learning and I'm constantly changing the way, and I'm constantly questioning myself to say and validating, is this something that's going to work or not? So I think that's kind of from a startup mentality. I've learned from Daxtra, from other great people I've had the pleasure to work with through my career.
So in the first 9 years, again, your first innings, right? You said it was booming, yeah? Could you talk about some of the decisions the company made that were great, and some of the decisions that you wouldn't necessarily redo?
Some of the things they did great, many things, and I think it was more the mentality. If we wanted to try something, we didn't sit around and go, hey, should we do this, and we all have to agree to the same outcome. We all have to be on the same page 100% of the time. It was like, should we give it a go? Makes sense. I mean, not in so much as a nonchalant attitude, I'm showing you, because there's money involved, there's investment in time, and time for when you're an early stage company, time is something that you can't afford to waste. But we gave things a go. If we really thought this is something that could work, we would just go for that and start that initiative immediately. We wouldn't sit around, and there was no bureaucracy or politics to stop us. And I think that speed and those risks, and you have to take risk in business, you have to take risks in life, because you don't take risks, you can't learn, you can't grow. I think that was what made Daxtra so successful. We gave it a chance, thought, yes, let's go to America, let's go to Asia, let's figure it out, let's see how we can be perceived and adopted in very different markets with huge cultural differences, different languages, different laws and systems, and let's understand how our solutions can be adopted.
And some of the lessons learned? What did you learn that what didn't work?
Gosh, I sound like such a cliche, and I apologize for this, but I think no one really told me this, but something I heard, and I think it was more in my days at LinkedIn, and I did live by this when I was at Daxtra, but I didn't have the term, just fail fast. Because Daxtra in the UK, we were very, very successful. Then I moved and opened up the Daxtra North American operation in 2007, 2008 hit, and I wasn't used to what I call failing. I wasn't used to it. I wasn't used to not having all these sales come in. I was like, what's happening? And I think because I was a one-man band for a little bit, you kind of have to look at yourself and go, well, hang on, if it's not working, I've got to look at myself to figure out, maybe it's not what I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it. Maybe I need to kind of understand what is the need of this market and not just assume that what happens in the UK is like for like in North America. And it sounds so obvious, but I was quite young at the time and no one had taught me anything. So I think just having to, do a bit of a self-evaluation of what was happening. And Daxtra, when I say this, and the guys at Daxtra as well did the same thing. We were like, hey, what are we doing wrong? We know this is a great product, we just can't seem to get it to fit in here. Why is that? And I think that sort of that self-evaluation, failing fast, and being very, very honest with ourselves, saying, hey, this isn't working because of this. We need to change it to do this for this market. And I think that was probably the biggest learning that has really been something that impacted me massively in a very positive way throughout my career, is to go, okay, if something's really bad, let's have a look at what I'm doing wrong first before I start to think about it's your fault.
So by the time, your responsibilities grew, right? And you essentially became the CEO, right?
Yes, so it was, for North America and then for APAC, yeah.
So how did your day-to-day job change? Like, you were selling a lot back then, right? And then when you became CEO, were you still very hands-on? Did you still meet a lot of customers?
Look, at the time, and we're still talking about my first innings, it was still, look, I think in some ways you could say, yeah, the CEO then to my CEO of APAC now is a very different role and responsibility. Back then, we were a smaller company. In some ways I could say I was a glorified CEO because I just kind of self-proclaimed that title because I was the first person, and I grew the business and had to learn to be, I had to learn leadership, things like that. So how my role evolved was learning responsibility, accountability, and learning leadership was the biggest thing that I had to learn very, very quickly because I soon had a team under me. And I'd managed many people before. So I think that's how my role, I would say, changed greatly at that time in my career.
You kind of glazed over that, right? So learning responsibility and learning to manage a team, right? How did you know that? I mean, was it also failing fast? Did people leave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's an interesting one. And you brought up my, I haven't talked about me being a teacher for a long time, so it's kind of funny just to think back about that. And someone says, if you weren't doing the job now, what would you be doing? I think I'd be a teacher. I'd go back to teaching. And what I loved about teaching was I learned with my style of teaching, and by the way, I'm not a teacher or anything like this, so I'm not going to say that I have the recipe for this, but what worked for me, and I think you have to be true to your own personality, I didn't try and teach my students all the same. I mean, obviously the class I would talk about the subjects and go for this, but then some student needed a little bit more of an arm around the shoulder, some student needed a little bit more tough love and coaching and different styles, because they were different personalities and they would respond to different tactics. I learned that from being a teacher, and I kind of brought that into the way that I led my team, because some people were, I think I was 27, and I had people a lot older than me that I had to manage, and so you don't want to come across as condescending, because the way I looked at it is I can learn more from you than you can from me, so that you have to go into it with humility and become more of an open conversation where we learn together. Other things where I'd have to learn when to set standards and targets. So I went back to my teaching style as well. Everyone's got a different personality and has a different experience, and I need to try and present myself and utilize different tactics and skills for each different personality to try and get the best out of them. Because for me, the most satisfying thing in my job, of course I like to make lots of sales and grow the business, is seeing my team really do remarkable things. It's like with my students, being able to give the tools for you to learn something and then go and apply it and put it into real life practice is an awesome feeling. It's the same with management, leadership. I can coach you, but then you've got to go and personalize that and do it in your own way to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's the learnings I picked up on, and I started to fine tune from my teaching career. And I've been the same ever since.
Yeah. Roughly, how many people did you manage at the time?
10? About 9 or 10, something like that, I think.
I see. So and then you ended up leaving Daxtra, right? So
North America was the bulk of people. Then I opened up after North America. I opened up the APAC operation, which is based here in Hong Kong, and then I left a couple of years after my opening the APAC business.
So what prompted you to leave at that point?
Yeah, a good question. And funny enough, since I came back to Daxtra, because obviously it's a small industry and some people are still here that haven't left, ask me exactly the same question. And full transparency, I felt I had a bit of imposter syndrome at Daxtra. You know, I had this very grand title, and I was the leader of the APAC and North American business, but I'd never been taught or had professional sales training or anything like this. It was all kind of self-taught through experience and just trying and failing and succeeding and all that. And so LinkedIn at the time knocked on my door and were interested to have a conversation. They wanted to expand into North Asia, and were looking for people with a SaaS background who'd been successful in region and you know, expanding to China and Japan and stuff like that. And what excited me was, it was a tough decision, but it was the fact that I knew that I could get someone to challenge me, and I could learn that, hey, maybe everything I think isn't the right way. I can get other people who are a lot smarter than me, you can go, oh, that's a different way, that's a different perspective, that's a different point of view, that's a different way you could approach this situation or that situation. And so it was to really help. I felt like that was a professional development that I needed to be able to, I wouldn't be doing this job today as leading the Daxtra team in this region if I hadn't made that decision. Put it that way.
I see. Okay. So after you left, right, there was in between you had your own entrepreneurial venture, right, the sneaker company. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Okay, so I don't want to make this podcast too long, so I'll try and make a long story short. When I lived in the States, I became very good friends with, and still very good friends with, my business partner Azariah, or AZ for short. And he originates from Ethiopia. And when we were drinking one day, he decided to tell me. I think at the time there was a big lawsuit between a very big name coffee shop, which I won't mention the name, but we can probably all guess, and Ethiopian coffee farmers. And Ethiopia is one of the biggest exporters of grade A coffee. At the same time, they are extremely popular when it comes to leather. And I say popular, they have some of the best leather in the world, or sort of grade A leather. There's only a couple of places in the world that have that material. And so we probably had a few more beers at this point, and so I was thinking, okay, this is leather, you're from Ethiopia. And then he introduced his friend from Kenya in this conversation, who is a sneaker designer. And I was like, hey, we should make a sneaker out of leather. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, when you've had a few beers, everything makes sense. Anyway, next morning, I think AZ said to me, I was like, are we serious about this? Is this something we really want to do? I mean, I was like, yeah, it sounds cool. Why not? Sneakers, I love sneakers. So we spent or put a bit of money into this business and went to explore, could we make, and our mission to this day, and at the time and still these days, changing the perceptions of Africa through high quality sneaker designs. And so we really wanted to change people's perceptions of what Africa is. We wanted to show that there is opportunity, there is quality, there's more than what you see necessarily on TV. Because when I was a kid, you'd see a lot of these commercials about, donate so much money and it will save an African child, it will feed them, which is a truth. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but there's also other sides of opportunity and dignity and pride, and we wanted to tell that story. So we decided that was our mission through the powers of creating a sneaker. And so that was in 2010, 2011 maybe, when we had that conversation. And since then we created a prototype. The prototype was awful. We still have it. I was like, how are we going to make a shoe? It looks so bad. But what we realized, and this is where I learned, let's just try and be better tomorrow, is just keep improving. A constant improvement in ourselves, the business, and in the product. And so we made we made the sneakers, and sort of the rest is history. And it's been an interesting, it's been one of my biggest, I think, quite proud of that business in some ways, because I think the world, the media, the industry, fashion I think recruitment's hard, fashion's brutal. We're told we were, crazy, and when people say I'm crazy, I kind of like that. It's like maybe we're onto something. And so, we did that, and that was just absolutely wonderful.
What's happening with the business now?
Unfortunately, it's a good story. I wouldn't say we haven't closed the business. It's just, and not to deviate from the podcast topics too much, but doing business in Ethiopia has been very challenging, and we've navigated that. We've done very, very well. A lot of people think it was because of COVID, and obviously that COVID has had a very negative impact, obviously not just on health, but on businesses around the world. There was a little bit of that, but after COVID in Ethiopia, which isn't well known, it was almost civil war, politics, different ethnicities within Ethiopia, fighting for power, devastation, and so it's very difficult to keep operations going and trying to send shoes out when the country goes on lockdown for warfare and stuff. So we still have the business. We're looking at diversifying, because the brand is very, very strong still. Unfortunately, that's where it is at the moment.
The reason I ask about that other business is because you see, you've been part of one business, Daxtra, right, which was started at the right time when everything was booming, and then you've got the sneaker business, which was conceptually a good idea, but then in the wrong place. There's a civil war, right? But when it comes to these business decisions, how should a CEO decide when to shut down the business?
It's a really good question, and I think there's two things. Like with the sneaker business, it was a passion project. So I think I would never tell another CEO, hey, I think you should close it down, because there's so many different things that go into it. And there's how much emotionality is in it, how much pride is in it. Sometimes a business where even if you're just keeping it going, but it gives you so much pride in this world, there is nothing wrong with that. If that makes you happy, generally happy and you're still prepared to fight the good fight, all the power to you. I think it's when you are doing, and you don't have to be a CEO, it could be anything, you can apply this to anything in life. When you're doing something and every time you go forward, it's like it's one step forward and two steps back, and you can't get out of that cycle, and it's affecting other areas of your life, mentally, physically, financially, emotionally. That's when I think you have to question things. And hopefully the key business leaders, or the key business leaders, but the top professionals in this world are ones that can see the signs before that happen. Obviously, that's why you have analysts and all these sort of things. I think that's when you have to measure how you prepare to keep going. Is there an upside coming, or that sort of thing. But I think it really comes down to various different aspects of your what you want out of it and how long you're prepared to get it. I think is key.
I see, and I guess how much money you have to burn as well. I guess,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I have friends that have closed business down, and I've got friends who are still struggling with their businesses, but it's their pride and joy. They're happy, they just keep them going, and they believe that there is a way to scale and go forward, and they're sticking to it, and they're the happiest people in the world. So it's, one analyst may say you should shut it down, but then at the same time, I think there's too many different variables in this world. We live in a crazy world right now where, we used to. Success was based on dollars, which money and growth is important, but I also think state of well-being, longevity is also important.
All right, let's go to your second innings. Yeah, Daxtra version 1, Daxtra version 2 for you, right? So how did that come about? So I know Sergey retired. He's doing something new now.
Yeah.
I was thinking he was probably going to go sit by some beach and drink pina coladas.
He might be. Sergey, great guy, and still very much part of the Daxtra family, because he's part of that DNA. But so essentially, look, when I left Daxtra, just to kind of put the story, some of the rationale of how I came back, it was, the door was always left open, and it was really lovely. I've gone through a lot of growth and challenges in my life, both personally and professionally, with Daxtra, and they've always been kind of a bit of a very good to me, almost like family in some ways. It's fantastic, and we always talked about, would I ever come back, and I don't think you can ever say you'll never do something, because that's a bit too big, but I said, look, I could be interested, but if I came back, it would have to be for something different, right? I think if I came back for what was, and if that wasn't so much of a change, I don't know if I would be the right fit, because I've done different things now, maybe my expectations are different. So we talked for several years, and they approached me about, look, we are at the forefront of the industry when it comes to CV parsing, automation, and particularly the search and matching side of our business, which is really kind of what's taken Daxtra to the next level. But we want to expand on this. We want to be, and we are, the leaders in this when it comes to recruitment and talent acquisition. However, to maintain that, we need to bring in additional ideas, new people. We want to scale faster, and we want to explore where else we can go with our ideas and new innovation. So a decision was made that they wanted to bring in new talent, and that was through Daxtra was acquired by private equity, and that meant the founders, is very much, particularly Andre, is still very much involved. We want to now really go fast and furious with where else can we take our solutions, and that was very exciting for me, because it's, when I say Daxtra 2.0, it sounds a little bit cheesy, but the framework's similar, but we're doing completely new, innovative solutions based on a very successful foundation. I thought, that's awesome. We're talking about agentic AI, generative AI, leading with new products, solutions, opening up into the talent acquisition space, and really scaling the business to a different level. I thought that's a very exciting opportunity. So when that came to me, it was kind of too hard to say no.
Now you also have a lot of competition, right? So how does Daxtra deal with competition?
Do you know, I think if you'd asked me that question when I was younger, I always thought it was like, we have to have the best product, which product and solutions is important. It has to work, because if we're not providing the right solutions, then you're not going to go very far fast. But I also think it's around your execution, and I think trust is a key thing. And I always think about it as like, you know, when you go into, I mean, psychology is part of everything, you know, making connections in the business world and relationships and trust and understanding each other's problems so we can try and fix things. That goes hand in hand with the solution. So just the products and solutions by themselves are fantastic, but I think it's the commitment of what we are trying to do at Daxtra. You know, we really are all about how can we improve the kind of engagement so we get great people into opportunity, into great careers. The world has been suffering. There's lots of people that have lost jobs or need job things. How can we get more people into opportunity? How can our technology be a catalyst, an optimization tool to be able to do that for both our recruitment customers or for talent acquisition? And so that is what's very exciting about what Daxtra is doing now. And I think because we have that mission with product, we are accountable for that. So it's not just about, hey, you should get Daxtra because you can make more placements. Yes, that's what it's about, but how can I help you build and maintain real trust with your candidates and clients? I think that's a deeper level, and I think that's the biggest differentiator of what we're doing, and that's why I wanted to come back.
And do you also measure all these things in terms of metrics? So for example, now you have 150 people, several thousand customers, right?
Yeah.
What can we expect, say, in 2 to 3 years' time?
So not only do we create solutions for, you know, recruitment and talent acquisition, it's also the measurements. We use them, the measurements, using data, using the latest in AI to understand patterns, to make not just prompts, but to really come up with solutions and ideas, and to move forward with things in a different way is what we're doing. So it's very difficult to say what, you know, where are we going to be? Is that the question going forward? I mean, my vision is to make sure that Daxtra is at the forefront of the industry for when it comes to candidate engagement and recruitment.
Let me ask you this, right? As a CEO, right? What do you think is the number one threat to the business?
I think the number one threat to business is if we stop innovating and being creative. If we stop being curious.
Is there a separate, say, R&D team?
Correct.
There's a separate R&D team, and there's a separate team that supports the product.
Yeah, product. We have a new product team, but the research team at Daxtra has always been kind of, I wouldn't say the heartbeat, because the heartbeat is the entire company, but it's a huge part of the business. It's the research and development is key. Even if it could be the smallest little improvement, we add that into product. We're always looking at how can we improve, where can we improve, where can the solution be driven. But also, I think our improvement and what we've learned is to be a bit more, I think the world's been a bit more, be a bit more customer centric, in the sense that at the start we were like, we know what the industry wants, but now we think we know, but we want to validate, and we want to work with our customers in the industry to really understand what's the pain point. How do we understand what you're trying to achieve, and how can we optimize this through great technology? Where does AI sit in this? I mean, everyone's talking about AI, things like that. So how can we improve our customers and our candidate experience through cutting-edge technology is always going to be the forefront of Daxtra. And to do that is we have to listen, and we have to take on board criticism. We have to take on board, oh, you got it wrong, to get it right.
I also want to ask you about team management. So you've got teams in different places, APAC, America, you know, and Australia as well, right? So how do you ensure that the culture remains sort of consistent throughout the company?
Yeah, culture's a big one, because, you know, 2024, 2025, I think, you know, we all hope it's going to be a little bit better, but I think culture is key to maintain a healthy business, to maintain a togetherness going forward. And it's difficult because obviously we've gone through quite a transformation at Daxtra. You know, we get new people in, new ideas, new strategies, new opportunities, things like this. So for me, and as a leadership team, so when I'm speaking to my boss, which is the global CEO, we talk about culture and people a lot. And I think the only thing you can do when you're going through a lot of change and what I say, making people uncomfortable, is just be very honest and transparent. I think if you can be like that, that's where culture can really thrive, because I think that's when people go, you might not always like the decision, but you understand the decision, making people feel part of it, where we're going. I think that is what we are I think we are doing, and we're not saying we're the best at it. I think it's that we're evolving because the company is growing and evolving, not just physically in our ideas and everything so fast. I think transparency is what we're trying to build more into in Daxtra internally to make sure people feel a part of the journey.
Right, so let me ask you this, for someone starting off right now, young graduate, computer science degree holder, right? They want to be CEO, right? What would you tell them to do? Like,
don't do it. That's a difficult question. I was at university or as a kid. I said, I don't think. Does anyone say they want to be a CEO? I mean, people say, you want to be like, you want to you want to be a fireman or you want to be this or something. And then when you get to university, you probably start to look at professionals and say you might want to be a doctor or something like this. But I don't think, if you really think about it, does anyone say I want to be a CEO? I think you are fall into it or you become it. Right. I think the biggest thing is for anyone, and that's not just for someone that's who's maybe coming from a computer programming background, who's a technologist, who wants to do it. I think it's just maintain curiosity in your area, especially open to ideas, take a chance and a risk, build something. And if you become the CEO, fantastic. I think your question is more about if you want to be a leader and create a business or something like that, because not everyone should be necessarily. I think people think that they should be a CEO are not necessarily the best CEOs. I think it's those that have worked into it. They've done various different roles. They understand product. They understand finance. They understand sales and marketing. They lead with empathy, and so they can have a better understanding. Become CEOs. I don't think anyone necessarily says I want to be a CEO. I could be wrong, but I think for someone in that situation, it would be, I think, just keep working at being curious and see where that falls, because as soon as you put a label on something, again, I think that can take you off the path of what you should be doing. I think that's the advice I would give my kids anyways. Don't label it, just keep being curious and being interested in stuff and see where that evolves to, and if it makes you happy and successful, then that may be the path that you should be continuing on, irrespective of what the title may be.
I've got one last question for you, which is stress management, right? You've told me about your running. Can you tell us what you do in terms of when things don't go your way? Every CEO, every person goes through ups and downs. What do you do during the downs, and how do you come back up?
Yeah, for me, it's exercise. It's getting away from the desk, getting away from the laptop or the phone. I mean, which is very hard to do, as you know, right? It's where you're kind of you're like a doctor. You're always on call, almost. There's no 9 to 5 anymore. It's just it's making sure carving out periods of the day where my kids are here, put everything away, just be in the moment, enjoy that moment. Because I think if you enjoy that moment, there's a calming, there's a presence that brings to you. I think it's good for the heart and the soul and the mind. That with I try and do some exercise, and that's a good thing, because that really, I feel, when you can burn off any anxieties or negativities or stresses, I think it helps you come into the next conversation about maybe a contentious situation with a bit more calmness and mental clarity, to be able to be maybe more objective about how you want to overcome a challenge or something. It's never, you don't come at it as a problem. You look at, well, how do I solution it? So it's kind of I think that's where being healthy and finding, whether you run or paddle's the new thing at the moment I'm trying to get into. I think anything like that, I think everyone, irrespective of seniority or whatever, should be doing something like that. Very important.
Great. Well, Christian, thank you so much. And I'm sure Daxtra is going to go. Well, there's going to be a version 3.0, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Daxtra becoming 500 people globally. And one day when you become public, make sure that I have some shares. Yes.
You never know. I don't know if we'll be there at that point. We'll see. But yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you.